not going to let some kooky jury stop justice.
And not one time in the defense closing statement did they mourn her death. Dorothy Calais Sims broke down and started crying during Linda Drain Burdick's closing argument, clutching Tot Mom's hand under the table. She's the rubber. She rubs Tot Mom all the way through the trial, the back massage, the rubbing.
But I know one thing, as the defense sits by and has their champagne toast after that not guilty verdict, somewhere out there, the devil is dancing tonight.
Full disclosure, I really don't like that lady. That was Nancy Grace during the running commentary on the equally irritating Casey Anthony trial. I've already got out my full disclosures. The histrionics, for not just myself, it turns out, but for a lot of people, too much to bear at times. But it was her coverage that certainly has driven attention to what has been the most closely watched trial in quite a while. She's the first to push the story, and it brought her network, HLN, out of a dismal ratings slump. By the time the verdict was announced, Caylee Anthony became the third most Googled search term in the world. Think about that. But did Grace, as a journalist or a legal analyst, whatever you want to call her, go too far? Did she help the public condemn Anthony as guilty before the trial ever started? And don't get me wrong, I'm not here a Casey Anthony apologist or fan by any stretch, but people hung on this woman's every word. Now there's talks about being rallies and stuff that she's going to have, and, you know, the devil's dancing tonight here and everything else. I don't know. For me, I couldn't take it from the very beginning, but I think I heard a few other folks, let me bring in Basil Smykel now, along with the panel, that agreed with me. Is she your cup of tea or no?
Well, she's becoming like Glenn Beck, so no, she's not my cup of tea. But, you know, it's interesting. If you go back and look at the history of these major cases, Star Jones became Star Jones because of OJ. So people make their careers off of these big cases. Now, she's been out for a while, and when she started, called attention to some real, you know, to these cases of missing young girls or missing children, children who've been killed. So there is some good in her. You know, there's good in everybody. There's good in her. But I do think that there comes a point in time where you lose credibility when you no longer are objective, and now you're moved into this place where
I don't think she's jumped the shark yet for a lot of people. They take her as more credible than anything else. And for me, Andrew, that first clip was probably the most damning. I'm not going to let some little jury get in the way. Yeah. People who watch and ask her to break down the law, a jury went in there, and it wasn't like one Yahoo created a hung jury. They unanimously said, because of the evidence that were given in front and the charge from the judge, the circumstantial evidence wasn't enough to convict her. And I'm not even talking about whether they got it right or wrong. That was my point. But when you have a woman who's all but egging on the mob here with the mentality to say, don't let that get in the way, the devil's dancing tonight, I'm saying there's a line, again, that I think they were getting close, if not crossed.
Putting aside the fact that her voice and her delivery to me are like fingernails on a chalkboard, as she might say. She's terrible at what she does. She's a former prosecutor. She knows how the rule of law works. She knows how a courtroom works. She knows that, you know, I didn't see anybody on the jury having sympathy for that little girl or mourning her loss. You're not supposed to. You're a jury. You're supposed to impartially look at the evidence and decide if that person is guilty or innocent. She got in the door because of her expertise in the courtroom, and she's apparently just chucking that over her shoulder now that she's...
I disagree. I mean, asking if, you know, she's gone too far is like asking which came first, the chicken or the egg. I mean, she has a responsibility to give legal analysis in her show because that's her shtick.
Is she doing
and
that,
people
though?
tune in because they want to see entertainment, and she provides
here's my point.
that.
If she was saying, listen, I'm here and I am Glenn Beck, I'm just going to come in and throw it all out there. But she's saying, I am an expert at the rule of law, and I'm going to break down what's going on in this trial,
Hey,
what evidence is or isn't.
Turn the channel.
That's
true. I mean, she doesn't bother me that much.
That's true, but I think we have, there has to be some responsibility here for the person in front of the camera. There's a fine line between reporting and commentary.
Well, the networks say no because it's after a certain, you know, after the 6 o'clock news. No, it can be persuasive.
Yeah, but the average person watching her doesn't really know where that line is. And if she comes on and identifies as a legal analyst, same way if I come along and talk about being a Democratic strategist, if I start espousing stuff that's actually more Republican than it is Democrat, somebody watching that is going to say, oh, that's what the Democrats actually believe. There has to be some she has to have some responsibility here too. And I think what's happened is she's starting to lose that a little bit. I think she does good things in terms of calling attention to these issues, but I think she's walking a fine line. She's blurring it. She's blurring that line.
She's been a go-to person on this case because this case has been interesting and people wanted to follow it, and slam dunk that she's going to be following it every day. But it's come at a cost for her. I mean, yes, she had viewers on this, but next week, middle of next week, when there's no Kaylee Anthony case,
she has blown up here as a personality.
I think her numbers significantly drop depending on what she's got around her. And here's the other thing. She's something of a national joke. I mean, there are people who watch her, but there are conversations like this one happening all across this country. And everybody is saying, like, oh my God, Nancy Grace. Have you heard anybody who's been like, man, that Nancy Grace has been right on top of this thing? I feel like I've got such a better insight.
Kim, this is where I'll say it. Today, you have people, the families under police protection, the parents, let alone Casey Anthony. This is in no small part because, let's just take her out of it. A person says, the jury's all wrong, this is what the facts of the case are, forget about what anyone tells you, even the judge or some pesky jury. I'm going to tell you what's right and what's wrong. She is the devil and she's dancing tonight. My point is, would we be saying the same thing if she has a rally of 1,000 people and she says, you know, take justice in your own hands or whatever, the implications? Would we still be laughing about this on Monday if this, you know, as he said, nails in it?
I mean, she's not saying that.
Devil's dancing tonight's getting close.
You know, see, I think what the problem is here that we want everybody to sort of view her fairly objectively. And I think that that's a very, very difficult thing to do. People are going to accept her people are not going to be able to necessarily sift through all of the right and the wrong that she says, whether it's legal, whether it's not. They're going to take her at face value, and I think she bears some responsibility for that. It's like Charles Barkley when he gets up and says, "I am not a role model." Well, you don't have the right. You can't really say who chooses to follow you or not. And I think the same thing.
I think, Basil, what you're saying is she's polarizing, and I think we can all agree that, you know, if you're seeking that kind of entertainment value or whatever.
But you don't think she has any responsibility? She's a personality. She's not. She doesn't follow the same rules that we do.
No. It's a completely different
Well, you
show.
can be polarizing, but the question is, are you objective in your analysis?
She's a courtroom
and
Glenn
she's
Beck.
not.
We should treat her with all the
And
seriousness
that's why I
we
rate
treat
the Glenn
Beck,
Beck.
which
I think
is
that's what you have to do.
not so much.
Yeah, and I don't think people treat her as a Glenn Beck. I think they treat her as a legal expert, and I think there's a difference, but we'll see.